Okay, now they lump the wind processes in here with the beach processes, so let's go over that, and we'll talk a little bit about wind erosion. Now it's got a lot of the same ideas that we've came across when we talked about rivers, and it's going to also transfer over when we talk about glaciers. Now, like rivers were fluvial, wind is what we call aeolian, the work of the wind. And the primary actions here are what we call deflation, where it's the removal and lifting of individual loose particles, and abrasion, which is the sandblasting action of the wind. So those are the two primary activities related to wind erosion. Okay, so uh, here's just an example of the wind, bending a tree, and you can see the snow here, where you get the grooves that are parallel to the wind direction. So deflation, again, uh, takes many forms where you're just removing and lifting material from the ground, and so it creates these unique surfaces like what we call desert pavement, these cobblestone surfaces, or it can blow out, create these huge depressions. So here's your typical desert pavement. So the deflation removes the sand, and what's left is the larger particles, and eventually they are consolidated into almost like a pavement. It's really brittle. I mean, it's almost like asphalt, for example. So abrasion is the second one, and it's like sandblasting, where the wind will lift particles up through deflation, and then the wind will propel them up against structures such as rocks, and they carve these unique things like yardangs, for example, and these benefacts here. Yardangs are these wind sculpted features in the benefacts you see in arid regions that are carved again by the movement of the sand over the surfaces of, in this case, the rocks. Now, just like in rivers, saltation is one of the ways that wind transports sand grains along the ground, just like this. So again, it's just like the water, only in this case it's the wind. Here's the wind direction, saltation, the particles lifted up and bounces down, and then surface creep, where it slides along the surface again, but it's all moving, okay? And then you also have very fine grains that are suspended in the air, just like you did with water. And so when these come back down and hit the ground, they throw up little particles of sand that get caught in the wind, suspended in the wind, and move on. Now, there's different types of deposition. One of the most famous ones is what's called loess, which is this glacial silt. When the glaciers during the Ice Age, they would grind the rocks up into these very, very fine particles. Wind would lift it up and move it around, and it would settle down. But it's incredibly fertile soil, and you'll see these in different parts of the world, these accumulations of loess, especially in China. Then we have sand dunes, which are these wind-sculpted accumulation of sand. There's different types. So again, make sure you look at the animation or the video in the weekly chapter module. Has the 6 types of sand dunes, because that's going to be on your test. So again, you can see it's like a wave in the ocean. The wind blows the sand along, and finally it overcomes the gravity and will slide down. And then again, it's like a wave, only a little slower, of course, but the sand will just keep moving along. So this is the slip face where the sand slides down. That's your slip face, okay, and that's where the dune is at its highest point. So the winds create this gently sloping windward side. Okay, so this is the windward side. Notice it's a more gentler slope. This is the slip face here, more steeper. That's the leeward side. And you have these different types of shapes. So again, that's explained in the video in the weekly module. So here's the wind direction. The wind blows the sand up here, and finally gravity will pull it down on the leeward side, so that's your slip face. So then this is the movement of the dune. And so sand keeps piling up, and the dune will keep moving, in this case, from left to right. So here's your different types. Your crescentic, and the horns always point downward. Your linear ones, where you get parallel, they're parallel with the wind direction, star-shaped, where you get winds that shift in all directions, parabolic, these dunes where you the opening face upwind, and usually the arms are anchored by some type of vegetation, and then dome ones, which are a little rarer, but these are the most common ones that we see, and these over here. So you can watch that video and the weekly module on that. And there's also one on dune formation, so it'll show you a little bit more how dunes are formed, and then one that talks about aeolian transport, wind transport. So those three animations, make sure you watch those, and that will explain it, and you can see it in action and help you answer the test questions.